This episode contains themes of extreme violence, gun warfare, organized crime, vehicular destruction, torture, drug use, medical trauma, revenge, and graphic physical injury. Listener discretion is advised. There are men who survive because they are disciplined, and then there are men who survive because the world simply cannot kill them fast enough. Tonight, the Crucible throws open its gates for two men built from gasoline, bruises, broken bones, and pure momentum. Two drivers shaped by violence, sharpened by pressure, and pushed through cities that tried to bury them alive. One is a professional who treats every job like a contract written in stone. The other is a human disaster moving at full speed with death breathing down his neck. Frank Martin lives by rules. No names, no questions, no changing the deal. Everything about him is controlled. The way he drives, the way he fights, the way he thinks 3 moves ahead before anyone else realizes that the game has started. Frank survives because he understands discipline. Every decision is calculated, every movement efficient. Behind the wheel, he turns chaos into mathematics. But control means very little when chaos refuses to stay down. Chev Chelios is adrenaline given flesh and blood. Poisoned, hunted, electrocuted, shot, beaten, and somehow still charging forward with enough fury to level a city block. Chev does not fight like a man trying to survive. He fights like a man already halfway dead and too angry to stop moving. Every second of his life feels stolen, and he intends to spend every last one of them breaking through whoever stands in his way. Frank Martin is precision under pressure, calm, focused, tactical. Chev Chelios is catastrophe with a pulse. And tonight, the roads between them lead to the same place, the Crucible. An arena without rules, without exits, without mercy. Just burning rubber, shattered glass, flashing lights, and two men who are never built to slow down. Because when the engine starts screaming and the violence finally erupts, only one question will matter. What survives longer? Discipline or pure, unstoppable chaos? Welcome to Chaos Crucible, where legends collide, violence becomes spectacle, and survival is earned one brutal second at a time. Tonight's battle drags us away from kings, gods, and cosmic monsters, and throws us headfirst into something dirtier, faster, more dangerous. This is not a clash between heroes. This is a collision between two men built for motion, two survivors shaped by high-speed violence and the cities that tried to destroy them. One operates with absolute precision, treating combat like a carefully calculated equation. The other tears through life like a slit stick of dynamite, with no intention of burning out quietly. Frank Martin is control under pressure, a wheelman with military precision, relentless discipline, and the ability to turn any environment into an escape route. Behind the wheel, he is untouchable. In a fight, he is efficient, methodical, and brutally direct. Frank does not waste movement, emotion, or opportunity. Every action has a purpose. Chev Chelios' purpose stripped away and replaced with instinct. He is violence fueled by adrenaline, rage, desperation, and the sheer refusal to collapse. The laws of pain simply barely apply to him anymore. The closer Chev gets to death, the more dangerous he becomes. He fights dirty, adapts instantly, and survives situations that should leave him dead 10 times over. Tonight, we are not asking who is the better man. We are asking what happens when unstoppable momentum crashes into perfect control. What happens when calm professional is trapped in the same arena as the man too furious to quit. Because the Crucible does not care about rules, contracts, or survival odds. It only cares about impact. And tonight, impact arrives at full speed. Every fight begins long before the first punch is thrown, before the engines roar, before the bullets fly, before the blood stains the pavement. The Crucible may decide where warriors collide, but it is the pain that shapes who they become when the violence finally starts. Frank Martin and Chev Chelios were not born as legends of the asphalt. They were built through pressure, isolation, and the constant understanding that survival is never guaranteed. One man learned to suppress emotions until discipline remained. The other became emotion unleashed at maximum velocity. To understand how this battle unfolds, we first need to understand the men behind the wheel. Frank Martin built himself into a machine long before anyone ever called him the transporter. Former special forces, highly trained, precise in both thought and execution. Frank understood early that emotions cloud judgment and hesitation gets people killed. So he created rules. Simple rules. Clean rules. Boundaries designed to keep his world controlled in a profession built entirely around criminals, betrayal, and violence. No names, no questions, no changing the deal. Those rules became more than procedure. They became armor. Frank moves through the criminal underworld like a ghost behind the wheel, transporting dangerous cargo and disappearing before chaos can catch him. But underneath that calm professionalism is a man surrounded by violence, corruption, and people desperate enough to destroy each other for money or for power. Every mission pushes him deeper into danger, forcing him to adapt faster, fight harder, and survive situations that would bury most men alive. Chev Chelios comes from a completely different world. Where Frank values control, Chev exists in a permanent freefall. Chev is not disciplined in the traditional sense. He is reckless, impulsive, vulgar, and explosive in nearly every aspect of his life. A career hitman operating in the middle of Los Angeles chaos, Chev survives not just because he plans perfectly, but because he refuses to stop moving. His life becomes a nightmare after being poisoned with a synthetic drug designed to kill him the moment his adrenaline drops. Sleep means death. Calm means death. Slowing down means death. And somehow, Chev turned that nightmare into fuel. Every second of his existence becomes a desperate sprint through violence, crime syndicates, car chases, gunfights, electrocution, and pure insanity. Most people would collapse under that pressure, but Chev becomes more dangerous because of it. Pain sharpens him. Panic energizes him. Survival becomes instinct so raw and immediate that he starts to feel less like a man and more like a force crashing through the city at terminal velocity. Both men are products of pressure, but pressure shaped them differently. Frank Martin became controlled because the world around him was unstable. He learned to compartmentalize fear, emotion, and attachment until all that remained was focus. Chev Chelios embraced instability completely. He weaponized desperation, turning chaos itself into momentum. One survives through restraint. The other survives by detonating every limit placed in front of him. And now, the Crucible is preparing to see which philosophy lasts longer once the violence truly begins. Origins explain the scars, but scars do not win fights. The Crucible strips away the backstory the moment the first strike lands. What matters then is execution, instinct, adaptation, the ability to keep moving when pain, exhaustion, and violence start closing in from every direction. Frank Martin and Chev Chelios may both be survivors, but the way they approach combat could not be more different. One fights with structure and precision refined through discipline. The other turns every battlefield into a riot fueled by adrenaline and despair. And this is where the clash truly begins. Frank Martin fights like a man who already knows how the situation ends. Everything about his combat style is efficient, clean, calculated. Whether he is behind the wheel of a car or standing in the middle of a room surrounded by armed attackers, Frank remains composed under pressure. He wastes nothing, not movement, not energy, not emotion. His military background is visible in everything he does. Hand-to-hand combat, tactical awareness, evasive driving, environmental adaptation. Frank understands positioning better than most fighters understand offense. He turns cramped hallways into traps, open roads into weapons, everyday objects into tools for survival. A jacket becomes restraint. Oil on a floor becomes a tactical advantage. A vehicle becomes both a shield and a missile. Even in chaos, Frank thinks ahead. And that calm is what makes him dangerous. Chev Chelios is dangerous for the exact opposite reason. Chev fights like the world is collapsing around him in real time. Because for him, it is. His combat style is reckless, improvised, and completely overwhelming. There is no elegance to it, no clean structure. Chev wins fights through aggression, unpredictability, and almost a supernatural tolerance for punishment. He crashes through situations instead of carefully navigating them. If Frank is a precision-engineered machine, Chev is a live grenade thrown through a crowded room. He adapts instantly, using momentum and raw instinct to survive situations that should have killed him long ago. Gunfights become brawls, brawls become car chases, and car chases become explosions. And yet, Chev keeps going. That refusal to stop becomes his greatest weapon. Broken bones, blood loss, electrocution, crashes, exhaustion. None of it slows him down for long. Pain is not a limitation to Chev. It is motivation. The more pressure he faces, the more unhinged and dangerous he becomes. Frank Martin relies on discipline to maintain control of a battlefield. Chev Chelios becomes more effective than once the battlefield loses control entirely. The difference creates a terrifying dynamic inside the Crucible. Frank wants order, angles, escape routes, timing. Chev destroys rhythm the moment he enters the fight. And that means Frank is not just fighting a man tonight. He is fighting unpredictability itself. Skill decides how a fighter enters the battle. Pressure decides who they become once the battle spirals out of control. And make no mistake, this fight was never going to stay contained for long. Frank Martin and Chev Chelios are not men built for quiet endings. Wherever they go, destruction follows close behind. Cars become wreckage. Streets become war zones. Every plan eventually collapses under the weight of speed, violence, and survival instinct. And now, the Crucible strips away preparation and forces both men into the same burning stretch of asphalt. No contract, no escape routes, no slowing down, only impact. The Crucible awakens beneath a skyline drowned in neon and rain. Floodlights flicker overhead while the arena reshapes itself into something between an industrial wasteland and a dead city street pulled straight from a midnight nightmare. Burned-out vehicles line the roads like skeletons. Steam hisses from the shattered pipes beneath the pavement. Sirens echo somewhere in the distance, distorted and endless, as if the city itself knows violence is coming. And then, the engines arrive. Frank Martin first. Black suit, black gloves, calm expression. His vehicle glides into the arena with surgical precision, headlights cutting through the smoke like blades. Frank steps from the driver's seat without wasted motion, already studying the environment, already calculating angles, exits, terrains, weaknesses. To him, every battlefield is a problem waiting to be solved. And then comes Chev Chelios. Not controlled, not refined, explosive. His arrival feels less like an entrance and more like a collision. Tires scream across the pavement. Metal scrapes concrete. The engine sounds like it is seconds away from detonating. Chev throws himself from the vehicle, already moving, already furious. Adrenaline pumping through him like gasoline poured directly onto an open fire. The fight starts instantly. Frank strikes with precision, closing distance fast, targeting joints, ribs, and pressure points. Every hit is efficient and deliberate, forcing Chev backward while maintaining complete control of spacing. Frank fights like a tactician, trying to end the battle quickly, before chaos takes hold. But Chev thrives inside chaos. He absorbs the punishment, crashes forward, and turns the exchange into a vicious street brawl. Elbows, headbutts, wild swings fueled by desperation and momentum. Frank tries to reset the rhythm of the fight, but Chev keeps destroying it every time the structure begins to form. The battlefield escalates around them. Gunfire erupts. Frank uses cover intelligently, moving with military precision between wrecked vehicles and concrete barriers. His shots are measured and economical. Chev fires while sprinting through debris and broken glass, forcing constant pressure no matter how reckless the approach becomes. And then the cars enter the fight. Because, of course they do. Frank weaponizes driving the same way other men weaponize combat training. Tight turns, controlled impacts, tactical positioning. His vehicle moves like an extension of his body, every maneuver calculated to trap, disable, or outplay his opponents. Chev drives like a man actively declaring war against physics. Collisions become opportunities. Speed becomes intimidation. Destruction becomes strategy. Vehicles slam into barriers. Sparks explode into the night. And twisted steel scatters across the arena as both men push harder and harder toward total annihilation. And through all of it, neither one slows down. Frank grows sharper under pressure, adapting constantly and searching for openings that finally put Chev down for good. Chev becomes more dangerous every second he remains standing. The Crucible starts to resemble a disaster zone. Smoke chokes the air. Sirens pulse through the darkness. Fire spreads across cracked asphalt while two men continue tearing their way through the wreckage like they were born for it. One fights with control. The other fights like control is already dead. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, shattered metal and violence, the Crucible realizes the terrifying truth about this mashup. Neither man knows how to quit. By now, the arena barely resembles a battlefield. It looks like the aftermath of a riot wrapped around a freeway pileup. Burning vehicles, collapsed concrete, bullet casings scattered across blood-soaked pavement. The kind of destruction that only follows men who were never meant to stop moving in the first place. Frank Martin came into this fight trying to maintain control. Chev Chelios came into it trying to survive. But the deeper the violence dragged them, the more those lines began to blur. Because eventually, every fight reaches the same moment. The moment where skills stop mattering. The moment where exhaustion sets in. The moment where every instinct takes over and the only thing left is the question every warrior faces: who breaks first? Some battles end with a body on a floor. Some end with surrender. And then there are fights like this one where the battlefield itself gives up before the fighters ever do. Frank Martin and Chev Chelios push the Crucible beyond the point of containment. By the end, the arena is barely standing. Vehicles burned in shattered intersections. Concrete splits between twisted metal. Smoke rolls through the flashing neon while sirens cry endlessly in the dark. And somehow, both men are still moving. Frank remains disciplined fighter throughout the battle. His precision, tactical awareness, and control allow him to dictate the pace whenever he manages to create space. He lands cleaner strikes, makes smarter decisions, controls engagements with cold efficiency of a man trained to survive impossible situations. But Chev was never going to fight on Frank's terms. Every time Frank establishes rhythm, Chev destroys it. Every time the battle starts becoming structured, Chev turns it ugly again. He crashes through pain, ignores damage that should stop him cold, and keeps escalating the violence until the entire fight becomes a blur of instinct, wreckage, and survival. And that is what makes this clash so impossibly truly to resolve. Frank Martin represents control under pressure. Chev Chelios represents pressure under control. One survives through discipline. One survives through momentum. Neither philosophy fully overcomes the other. Frank cannot completely neutralize Chev's chaos before the battlefield collapses around them. Chev cannot fully overwhelm Frank's experience and precision without taking devastating punishment in return. Every advantage one man gains is another answered by adapting, retaliating, or simply refusing to stay down. By the final moments, the fight barely resembles combat anymore. It becomes endurance. Two exhausted monsters dragging themselves through fire and broken asphalt. Too stubborn to quit. Too dangerous to ignore. Frank is bleeding but focused. Chev is barely holding himself together through adrenaline and fury alone. Neither is willing to surrender. Neither is capable of truly finishing the other before the arena itself begins to collapse. And that is where the Crucible reaches its conclusion. Not with victory, not with defeat, but the mutual destruction waiting one step away while two men continue trying to outlast the impossible. Because some fights are too evenly balanced between skill and madness to produce a clean ending. Frank Martin proved he could survive chaos. Chev Chelios proved chaos could survive anything, and in the end, the Crucible could not separate them. This has been Chaos Crucible. Tonight, discipline collided headfirst with destruction, and somewhere between the burning asphalt and shattered steel, the line between control and chaos disappeared completely. Frank Martin brought precision, patience, and professionalism into the arena. Chev Chelios answered with adrenaline, madness, and the absolute refusal to die. Neither man walked away untouched, and neither man could fully put the other down. Some battles crown a winner, other battles leave only wreckage behind, and this one has left plenty of it. But the Crucible never stays quiet for long. More warriors are waiting, more worlds are preparing to collide, and more impossible fights are already revving their engines somewhere in the dark. Until next time, stay curious, stay reckless, and remember, in the Crucible, survival is never guaranteed. Sometimes, all you can do is keep moving. If you liked tonight's episode, please check out my other shows. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. And also, if you happen to want to check everything else out, the links are going to be in the description below. Also, check out our friends at Hey Anime and Fandoms and let them know I sent you.